For 3,000 years, the galaxy had known peace. Treaties were signed, borders were respected. Trade bloomed between species that once hunted each other like animals. The Galactic Accord, formed after the last devastating war, became the backbone of this uneasy harmony. The Archon Dominion, the Vailari clans, the insectoid Krell, the sentient gas forms of Nebari, and a dozen other powerful empires upheld the code. And yet, humanity never signed it. Not once. They weren't banned, not exactly, just ignored, dismissed. Shelved into that dark, forgotten corner of the galaxy where no one really wanted to look. Humans were unpredictable, volatile, emotional creatures. Too young, too messy, too chaotic. So when the Galactic Accord was finalized, the decision was quietly unanimous. Leave Earth out of it. Let them rot in their backwater system. And they did, or so everyone thought. That is, until today. A single message rippled across the entire galaxy. Short, cold, unmistakably clear. This is Supreme Executor Jakal of the Krell Armada. The Accord is null. War is declared. Our first target is Earth. The gas forms of Nebari howled in frequencies only stars could hear. The Archon overlords called emergency sessions. The Vailari, ever proud, prepared their fleets, but the one species that should have panicked didn't flinch. Earth received the message, and humanity? They smirked. Not because they thought it was a joke, not because they underestimated the threat, but because they'd been waiting for 3,000 years. The rest of the galaxy had spent millennia softening, padding their power in treaties and diplomacy. But humanity? Humanity never stopped sharpening its claws. Beneath the surface of a seemingly quiet Earth were defense systems so advanced they made the Krell's armada look like toy ships. Hidden colonies on Saturn's moons had weaponized gravitational folds. Mars wasn't a red wasteland. It was a fortress. Humanity had never needed an invitation to the Accord. They built their own council in silence. And now, war had come knocking. In the darkest war room buried under the Himalayan mountains, Commander Rhea Solis leaned back in her chair, sipping bitter black coffee as she watched the Krell fleet move closer on the holographic grid. "About damn time," she muttered, a crooked grin tugging at her lips. Beside her, General Isaac Thorne, gray-bearded, scarred, and dangerous, cracked his knuckles. They finally picked the wrong backwater species. Outside Earth's atmosphere, the first wave of Krell cruisers jumped out of warp. Each was the size of a small moon, armed with dark matter torpedoes and singularity cannons, the kind of firepower meant to wipe out planets. But the ships didn't last even 10 seconds. Dozens of tiny flashes lit the void, silent, precise. One by one, the Krell ships shattered like glass under sniper fire. High above Earth, buried in the shadows of asteroid fields, humanity's defense satellites came alive, silent killers built with alien tech reverse-engineered over centuries. The rest of the galaxy watched in disbelief. This wasn't war. This was a massacre. On Vailari Prime, a young diplomat whispered what everyone was starting to realize. "We ignored them for too long, and now they've become monsters in the dark." But the Krell weren't finished. This was just their first move. Their real army hadn't even arrived yet. Deep in the black holes of Krell territory, a planet-sized superweapon began to stir. They still thought they could win. They still thought humans were just animals. But the one thing every Krell commander forgot was that you don't corner a species that thrives on chaos, because when peace breaks, the galaxy screams, but humanity smirks. The Krell High Command didn't take the first defeat lightly. When news of the obliterated fleet reached their war chambers, located in a subterranean ocean of liquid obsidian on their homeworld, there was silence. Not outrage, not confusion. Just a stunned, suffocating silence. Then came the screaming. Supreme Executor Jackal, his crystalline limbs twitching with rage, slammed a clawed appendage into the table, cracking the reinforced stone. How did they develop such firepower? He hissed, his voice echoing through the chamber like nails dragged across metal. They were primitive, uninvited, unworthy. But deep down, he knew. He knew they should have wiped out Earth 1,000 years ago, when the humans first reached past their solar system. But the Accord made it clear. No unprovoked attacks on developing species. So they waited. And now, the Krell had hesitated too long. Across the stars, panic spread like wildfire. Galactic news networks replayed the footage, humanity's defense satellites firing with surgical precision, dismantling one of the most feared fleets in the galaxy in less than a minute. Treaty planets went into lockdown. The Arkan Dominion, usually calm and calculating, summoned their war elders. Even the Nabari, their cloud bodies drifting in zero-G sanctuaries, hummed in frequencies that meant one thing: fear. Yet Earth remained calm. No public broadcasts, no emergency alarms, just the humming silence of a species that had waited generations for this moment. In the orbit above Saturn, inside a disguised mining station known only as Black Core, Rhea Solis stood at a massive window, staring at the stars with narrowed eyes. "They're going to send more," she said. General Thorne leaned on the edge of the command table, his jaw clenched. "Let them." The man beside him, Dr. Elian Voss, a theoretical physicist turned weapons architect, chuckled without humor. "They have no idea what's under their feet. We've got weapons that bend time around a target. We've got AIs so advanced they rewrite their own code mid-battle. Hell, our kids play war games more realistic than what the Krell just threw at us." Solis didn't smile. She didn't move. Her eyes flicked toward the outer rim of the solar system. "Activate Protocol Seraphim." A tech officer stiffened. "Ma'am, that's a full planetary mobilization. Even the dormant labs—" "I said activate it," she snapped. It had begun. Across Mars, sleeping bunkers opened for the first time in centuries. Generational soldiers, bred, trained, and cryo-frozen in rotation, woke up to klaxons and war briefings. Some smiled. Some cracked their necks. All were ready. On Europa, cloaked human dreadnoughts began to shift beneath the ice, rising with monstrous power. One vessel, the Silence of Terra, began warming its fusion core, a weapon capable of vaporizing an entire moon. In the shadows of the Oort cloud, humanity's Black Ops fleet began to drift toward Krell space, invisible, silent, murderous. Meanwhile, on Earth, the civilian population continued life as normal. No riots, no fear, no panic, because this had always been the plan. Ever since humanity was excluded from the Accord, their leaders knew. They weren't being left out. They were being isolated, watched, feared. So Earth turned inward, became a fortress, not just technologically, but culturally, mentally, genetically. They didn't care about being loved. They wanted to be ready. The Krell, furious and humiliated, were preparing their true weapon now. A biomechanical god machine that took centuries to construct, the Leviathan, bigger than a planet, smarter than 1,000 Krell strategists, fueled by black star energy and revenge. But humans? They'd already built something worse. And it had a name. Project Hades. It was no ship. It was no fleet. It was a human being. One man. The last result of a banned experiment in spliced AI neural grafting, combat mutation, and quantum cognition. He hadn't been awakened in over 100 years. He was sleeping until now. As Earth's deepest vaults hissed open, alarms sang across hidden facilities. Inside a chamber of black stone and red light, a voice rang out. "Subject 0, consciousness online." His eyes opened. They glowed like dying stars. He didn't speak when he woke, didn't move, didn't blink, just sat there, chained, suspended in the air, wrapped in more containment protocols than an active black hole. Project Hades. Real name, unknown. Origin, erased. History, classified under layers so deep not even Earth's top brass could access it without a blood key. The thing that made him terrifying wasn't the strength or speed or the ability to phase through matter. It was the way he thought. Not like a man, not like a machine, like something in between. The AI grafts in his brain processed probabilities faster than quantum computers. His human instincts, rage, creativity, vengeance, gave him the one thing no alien superweapon could mimic: unpredictability. Commander Solis stood before his chamber, her voice low. "You know what's coming?" His head tilted slowly toward her. The chains groaned. "Leviathan," he said, voice like gravel tearing through steel. She nodded. "We need you awake. Earth is mobilizing. The galaxy's watching. The Krell think they can end us." The chains hissed. Magnetic locks clicked. A blue-red glow wrapped around him, then faded into sparks. He dropped to the floor barefoot, silent. "Then let's remind them," he said, eyes narrowing, "why they were afraid of us in the first place." Far across the stars, in the dark bowels of Krell Prime, the Leviathan stirred. It wasn't just a weapon, it was alive. Grown from the fused DNA of a collapsed sun's core and ancient Krell warriors, the Leviathan's body spanned cities, limbs like towers. Its eyes were the size of dreadnoughts. Within its chest, a hive of Krell consciousness, generals, assassins, priests, all merged into one hateful, godlike intelligence. Jakal knelt before it in reverence. "My master," he whispered, "Earth has defied us. They slaughtered our scouts, mocked us." The Leviathan's voice didn't speak. It vibrated through the planet itself. "Then let them be erased." Across the Krell fleets, energy signatures surged. Millions of warships warped toward Sol System, tearing through space like locusts hungry for annihilation. At their center, the Leviathan loomed like a dark star. But Earth wasn't waiting. In deep orbit, the silence of Terra jumped first. It didn't fire missiles. It folded space. A pulse wave rippled out, and in its wake, 3 Krell cruisers collapsed inward like tin cans under a god's heel. They didn't even have time to scream. Behind it, Black Core's fleet spread out in diamond formation, moving like a hive of blades. Human AIs controlled the vessels, not remotely, but instinctively, connected directly to enhanced pilots. One thought, one kill, and then came the Red Phantoms, humanity's elite, soldiers in dark armor so advanced it messed with light itself. They didn't just cloak, they vanished from reality for seconds at a time, jumping between molecules, dodging plasma, appearing inside enemy vessels to slit throats before anyone even realized. Across every sector, Krell ships began to die. But it wasn't over. Not even close. The Leviathan reached Saturn's orbit. One blast from its core cannon wiped out an entire moon. Commander Solis stood on Earth's surface, eyes locked on the live feed. She didn't blink. "Deploy Hades." Project Hades leapt into the void. No ship, no armor, just a man wrapped in adaptive nanotech that flowed over his skin like black fire. He dove straight toward the Leviathan, through enemy fire, through metal storms, and crashed into the beast's surface hard enough to leave a crater the size of a stadium. The Leviathan growled, confused. A human? Alone? It fired. But Hades wasn't there anymore. He was inside now, tearing his way through bioflesh and machinery, faster than light, tearing apart its nervous system with his bare hands. One thought kept echoing in the Krell's hive mind, a thought that grew louder every second. This is impossible. But it wasn't. It was human. Inside the Leviathan, the air was thick with heat, screams, and blood. Not human blood, but a putrid, steaming black ichor that pulsed with alien intelligence. The inner walls breathed like a living organism. Organic tech fused with bone, muscle, and dark alloys twisted around massive arteries pulsing with antimatter. And Hades was ripping through all of it. Every step he took left death behind. His nanotech suit adapted instantly, shifting into claws, spears, tendrils, slicing through tissue, melting circuitry, disintegrating shielding. Every Krell drone that tried to intercept him burst apart mid-charge. Their hive mind couldn't predict him. The moment they adapted to his speed, he changed direction. When they adapted to his strength, he became faster. When they tried to flee, he was already in front of them. The Leviathan shuddered violently. Out in the void, Krell commanders were screaming through their comms, watching in horror as their god machine began bleeding. On Earth, Solus stood before the hologram, watching the Leviathan's energy signatures spike, then blink erratically. Thorn crossed his arms. How the hell is he doing that alone? He's not alone, Solus replied coldly. He is Earth. Every brutal mistake, every war, every betrayal, every experiment we were shamed for, he's the sum of it all. Then what happens if he loses control? She looked at him. We don't let him. Inside the Leviathan's core chamber, Project Hades stood face to face with the Nexus, an enormous sphere that pulsed like a dying sun. This was the heart of the beast, the Krell's consciousness hive. Billions of voices cried out in rage, confusion, fear. He stared at it, and it stared back. Thousands of tendrils lashed out, trying to pierce his body, overwhelm his mind, invade his thoughts. But they didn't find fear. They found a storm. And then something inside him snapped. Hades dropped to his knees, clutching his skull as the AI inside his neural system began to fracture. Memories he'd buried began to rise, not just war, but childhood. Pain, experiments, screams behind glass. He saw himself as a boy in a cold, white room, wires in his spine, needles in his brain. Scientists arguing whether his emotions were a liability or a weapon, and then her, the voice, the one that calmed the storm, the girl in the next cell over. Her laugh, her touch, the promise they'd made to each other if they ever escaped. You survive for me, she'd said, and I'll survive for you. But she didn't. She died in a fire when the lab was purged. Another failure buried under classified cleanup. The Krell tried to weaponize his grief, tried to turn it into a weakness. Instead, it became a bomb. He stood up, shaking, and let the pain consume him. Not to destroy himself, but to burn everything around him. You want humanity's truth? He whispered to the Nexus, voice cracking. It's this. His body lit up with light. We suffer, and then we make you pay. The Nexus screamed. A burst of energy tore through the Leviathan from the inside out. Entire chambers collapsed. Synapses burst. Krell minds howled and went silent. The god machine trembled, and for the first time in its immortal life, it fell. Out in space, the human fleet pulled back as the Leviathan began to twist and crack. Chunks of its living armor splintered away. The Krell formations wavered. Solus stared as the feeds came in. Is he still inside? No signal, the tech officer whispered. And then, just as the Leviathan began to implode into a singularity of broken will and failing mass, one dot flew out. No ship, just a man wrapped in red-hot nanofire. His body burned, but his eyes were calm. Silence. That's all there was after the Leviathan fell. Not triumph, not celebration, just a long, stunned silence across the galaxy. Entire civilizations paused their broadcasts mid-sentence. Diplomatic channels went dark. In the heart of the Galactic Accord, where once hundreds of species debated and argued for peace, only a single sentence played on loop. The Leviathan has fallen. The impossible had happened. A human, not a fleet, not an empire, but a single human, had torn through the Krell's most sacred weapon like it was a child's toy. And what was worse? He walked away. Project Hades, skin burned raw beneath the repairing nanotech, drifted gently in orbit above the collapsing remains of the Leviathan. A retrieval pod from Black Core finally caught him in its magnetic cradle. Medtechs rushed to his side but didn't dare touch him until he spoke. "I'm done," he muttered. "Put me back to sleep." But Commander Solus had other plans. "You're not going anywhere. Not yet." Back on Krell Prime, chaos reigned. Their god was dead, their fleet scattered, leaderless, demoralized. Jaquel, once the supreme executor, now barely holding his own against civil collapse, roared in desperation. "Retreat is treason! We will rebuild!" But no one listened, because now something far more terrifying than defeat was spreading among them. Doubt. What if humans weren't just lucky? What if humans weren't just angry? What if humanity had always been something the galaxy wasn't ready for? On Earth, things moved quickly. The victory wasn't publicized. No grand speeches, no monuments. Because Earth's leaders understood something vital. Fear was more effective when it was quiet. Let the galaxy wonder how they did it. Let them imagine what else Earth had in the shadows. Because the truth? They didn't even use half their arsenal. Mars defense protocols hadn't activated their supergravitic warheads. Europa's AI-run mines still had sleeper weapons buried 100 miles deep. The rings of Saturn hadn't unleashed their kinetic sun lances. And Project Hades? He was just one of 5. Inside a classified compound beneath Antarctica, Commander Solus stood in a long, dark corridor lined with cryogenic pods. She paused at the 4th one, her breath fogging the glass. Inside floated a woman, eyes closed, silver veins laced across her skin. Her code name, Nemesis. General Thorne appeared behind her. "You really want to wake another one?" Solus didn't answer right away. Then, "The Krell are just the beginning." He frowned. "You think the Accord will come after us?" She nodded. "Not think. No, they weren't cheering Earth's victory. They were terrified of it. Terrified that one species, so young, so volatile, could bring down a galactic titan with one soldier. So now, the galaxy would unite, not to help humanity, but to contain it. In a hidden chamber light years away, the Council of 9, the heads of the Accord, gathered in panic. "They've broken every law of evolution," one shouted. "No species should advance this fast." "They didn't advance," said another, voice low. "They adapted. They learned in silence. While we debated peace, they prepared for war." "Then we must act," said the oldest of them all, "not with diplomacy, but with extermination." And with those words, the Accord signed its death warrant. Because Earth had already seen this coming, and they weren't afraid. They were ready. The broadcast came in across all frequencies, translated into every known language in the galaxy. The Galactic Accord hereby declares humanity an existential threat to universal stability. As of now, all human expansion beyond Sol is prohibited. Any ship seen crossing territorial lines will be destroyed. Any planet harboring humans will be cleansed. It was the biggest interstellar coalition ever formed. 212 alien species, some of them enemies for centuries, now stood united under one banner: eradicate Earth. They didn't even call it war. They called it a containment protocol, like humanity was a virus. In a hidden Earth orbit facility, Commander Solus and General Thorne stared at the projections. Dozens of fleets, thousands of warships, planetary siege engines, reality-piercing cannons. "Just look at them," Thorne muttered. "They think they're bringing justice." Solus smirked. "They're bringing volunteers." "Volunteers?" "For us to test the rest of our weapons on." Earth had always known this would happen. That's why they didn't waste time building peace treaties with species that looked down on them. Instead, they turned inward, built in silence, perfected weapons not just for war, but for reputation. They knew one day the galaxy would come to kill them, but when that day came, Earth wouldn't hide. It would demonstrate. It began at the Kuiper Line. The Accord sent a test fleet, 50 dreadnoughts, enough firepower to glass a solar system. They never even made it past Neptune, because Neptune wasn't just a planet anymore. It was a trap. Black satellites hidden in its icy rings activated. Gravity inversion beams lanced out, folding space like paper. The dreadnoughts blinked out of existence in under 5 seconds. Not even wreckage remained. Just silence. The Accord tried to jam the footage, suppress it, but humans hacked the feed, broadcasted it live, and added a message. Try again. The next wave was smarter, faster, equipped with stealth tech, and manned by elite psychic tacticians. Earth let them land this time. They touched down on Pluto, confident it would fall. But Pluto wasn't Pluto. It was a decoy. The real Pluto had been hollowed out a decade ago and replaced with a full-scale battlefield simulator. The Accord troops never even fought humans. They fought constructs, machines designed to look human, bleed like humans, cry like humans. It broke them. Hundreds of elite alien soldiers surrendered mid-fight, throwing down weapons in confusion, sobbing at the horror of what they faced. Because Earth didn't fight fair, it fought emotionally, psychologically, like a species that had lost everything and learned to weaponize grief. Back on Earth, in a facility miles beneath the ocean floor, the final 3 projects stirred in their pods. Hades, Nemesis, and now, Salvation. A man born in zero gravity, who never learned to walk, but could bend magnetic fields with a flick of his thoughts. Solus walked between the pods, heart pounding. "We don't just win this war," she said to her team. "We end it, not with survival, with dominance. The galaxy wants fear?" She turned to the live feed of Accord worlds rioting in panic. "Then let's give them religion." Meanwhile, on a rogue planet drifting in the dark, Jakal, now a fugitive from the Krell, met with other exiled warlords. Their fleets shattered, their pride in ashes, they now whispered the one truth that terrified them more than death. "We should have destroyed them when they were still climbing trees. We didn't create monsters, we inspired them. And now we'll all pay." They struck at dawn. Not because it was strategic, but because humans liked the symbolism. The Accord's outermost colony, Rysar Prime, a lush trade hub run by 5 separate species, had never seen war, never needed to. Its orbital defenses were minimal, its diplomatic center massive. So when the sky cracked open, no one knew how to respond. Earth's first offensive fleet, codename Cerberus, descended like ghosts. No radio signals, no energy buildup, just black silence and then hell. Kinetic rods rained from orbit, moving so fast they broke physics. No explosions, just implosions, buildings, defense towers, biospheres all crushed inward, as if space itself had decided to bite down. Before the Accord could even activate its distress beacons, human drop pods tore through the atmosphere. They didn't land, they slammed. Troops exited, fully encased in black exoframes, faceless, voiceless, and emotionless. No battle cries, no declarations. They moved like machines, But every shot was precise, every move personal, because Earth hadn't sent soldiers. They'd sent survivors, people who remembered their friends dying in Accord cleansing operations. Farmers whose colonies were erased when humanity was still begging for diplomatic recognition. Refugees, scientists, orphans. The Accord had taught them to suffer. Now Earth was teaching them to return the lesson. By the time the Accord's fleet arrived, Ricer Prime was gone. Not conquered, not occupied, just emptied. Humanity didn't want territory. They wanted a message, and they left one. Etched in the ruins, burned across the largest crater with orbital plasma. You brought the war to our door. Now we're coming through yours. Panic hit the galaxy like a virus. Accord leadership issued new emergency measures. All human transmissions were to be blocked. Human language was outlawed on Accord networks. All species were warned. Aiding Earth would result in planetary blackouts. But deep down, they all knew it was too late, because humanity wasn't fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for control, and they were winning. Project Hades stood on the command deck of the battleship Revenant. His body still bore the burns from Leviathan. His eyes, colder now, empty in a way even his creators hadn't expected. He looked at the galactic map. Earth was here. The Accord was here. But between them, 100 vulnerable worlds. Nemesis leaned beside him, armored like a goddess of death. When do we hit the next target? He didn't answer. Instead, he looked at a red-marked system. Juraxis, one of the Accord's core power planets, civilization centers, shipyards, data towers, a system that was supposed to be impenetrable. He tapped it once. Now, on Earth, Commander Solus met with the rest of her war council. General Thorne, President Lang, the AI Trinity. They were all here now. The mood wasn't pride. It was preparation. They're going to try something reckless, Lang said. A last stand, a planet killer, maybe even star ignition tech. They'll lose control before it matters, Solus replied calmly. They're fractured. Scared. And us? She looked at the monitor showing Earth, scarred, beautiful, defiant. We've never been more united. Elsewhere, on Juraxis, the Accord's High Marshal stood on a glass balcony, watching refugees flood into megastructures. He turned to his aide, voice trembling. They're just one planet, one species. How are they winning? The aide didn't answer right away. Then, because we never respected them. We warned them instead of listening to them. Now they're not asking permission anymore. They're not going to stop, are they? The aide looked towards the stars. No, sir. They're just getting started. The galaxy came to end humanity. But in the end, it wasn't war that changed everything. It was fear. And what one species could become when the whole universe pushed it too far. The Accord made one last move. A desperate strike, a sun killer, a weapon designed to collapse a star from the inside out, taking every planet in the system with it. Its target? Sol. Earth. The weapon was disguised as a peace envoy, a final negotiation with humanity. But humans weren't stupid anymore. They intercepted it halfway to the Kuiper Belt, and they didn't just stop it. They turned it around. The reprogrammed sun killer emerged above Juraxis like a black god. It didn't announce itself. It didn't threaten. It didn't posture. It just hung there, absorbing solar mass and swelling with every second. Accord leaders scrambled. They begged, broadcasted surrender, promised reparations. They even offered Earth a seat at the galactic table, a chance to join the elite. But Earth didn't want a seat. They were flipping the table. Commander Solus appeared on every channel, her voice calm but final. You tried to erase us. Now you'll remember us forever. And then, she activated it. Juraxis's star went nova in under 10 seconds. The light reached planets that hadn't even evolved eyes yet. The shockwave shattered 5 Accord fleets in nearby systems. And the survivors? They didn't retreat. They bowed. Because finally, they understood. Humanity wasn't a mistake. It was a message. Don't poke the species that builds weapons from desperation. That engineers rage into strategy. That learns pain like it's a second language. Project Hades watched the fire from orbit, silent. Beside him, Nemesis wiped ash from her visor. "Do you think it's over?" she asked. He shook his head. "Nothing's ever over. But we've won." "No," he said, voice distant. "We've survived. There's a difference." Decades passed. Then centuries. The Accord became a myth. The galaxy reshaped itself around a new rule. Do not provoke Earth. Humans didn't expand much after that. They didn't have to, because their name alone became a weapon. On far-off colonies, alien children whispered it like a boogeyman story. Don't disobey the curfew, or the humans will come. Diplomats spoke it with reverence, pirates with fear, and in the darkest corners of the universe, on outlaw stations with blood-soaked walls, criminals made deals under one silent condition. Just don't get Earth involved. Back on Earth, now more peaceful than it had been in centuries, Commander Solus, older, scarred, tired, stood in the last war room. She looked at the stars and whispered, more to herself than anyone, "We never wanted to be gods. We just got tired of being prey." And in the cryogenic vault deep beneath Saturn's rings, the last 2 projects remained frozen, still sleeping, just in case. Because Earth knew. The galaxy forgets quickly. But humanity? Never again.